Welcome to a very special Emmys edition of Couch Surfing. One of the most important elements of television is costume design, and we were lucky enough to speak with 4 of the nominees in this year's Outstanding Period Costume category. Up first, I sat down with last year's winner, Donna Zakowska, and she's nominated for the 3rd year in a row for The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Check it out. You know, for me, Midge's costumes and dresses function like their own plot devices. It's like each look helps advance the story. Do you view the clothing playing that role as well?
Sometimes even, accentuate it or dramatize it. In the case of like Midge, many times her clothes have for me sort of dramatized her emotional state or her emotional dilemma. So there's no question that they go beyond the physicality of the cloth or the actual physical piece for me.
But also the clothing seems to reflect where she is in her life. When she's on stage, she obviously dresses differently than when she does in her everyday wear, even though her everyday wear can be far more flamboyant than most people.
I always say a little bit more like a magical reality. And there's just a little bit heightened. What I always hope is that they're still credible. And of course, a lot of that, Rachel is very responsible for that because she is, as I always say, a great animator of clothes and of costumes. When she puts a piece of clothing on, or when you give her a handbag or something, she embraces it and really knows how to use it. That isn't, again, always the case. Often actors, things become very awkward, or they don't use it to sort of enlarge the drama of the scene. Whereas Rachel, immediately can sort of figure out how does this work? How can I make this really work for me as a character?
We have to talk about Abe and his style as well. Did you enjoy the berets and the scarves and throwing all of those accessories at Tony Shalhoub?
I really did, and he did such a good job of making them work. I thought he looked incredibly handsome in them.
Very dashing.
So did his wife.
Absolutely.
But I went to the Beaux-Arts. I went to art school in Paris. And so I have, Paris is really my second city. It's a city I really love. So making those sort of comments about French clothing and bringing Tony, who is such a fantastic actor, into that world was just incredibly delightful for me,
We caught up with the costume designer for the series Pose, Analucia McGorty, and she talked all about what it's like to recreate the elaborate styles of ball culture. Let's take a look. Can we talk about how Elektra's Marie Antoinette ensemble came together? This is a piece of art. Please walk me through this.
Well, the first thing is always what's on the page. So for us, it's like what's been scripted, and our wonderful writers and Ryan Murphy and the creators always have the most fantastical ideas. I mean, it's like every script is opening up a present at Christmas. But, it's also the year that Madonna became a big part of pop culture. And it's a funny thing when you start researching, you see how much Marie Antoinette was integrated into pop culture at that time. Right. I found this incredible sculpture from the time period of a woman inside of a merry-go-round. And we started thinking about it and putting together some ideas, and Ryan loved the idea that this would have motion and be something that they could play with. So it was really sitting down with my tailors, sketching it out, and then figuring out how to mechanically make the skirt work and mechanically make the jacket work, because the jacket, she pulls a cord and it comes over her head, so it has that illusion. Right. And it was so much fun. It was engineering and creativity and very DIY, and also having to make it feel like this was something that the community at that time could make.
Now, were you familiar with ball culture before joining this series? Because I know for a number of viewers, this is their first introduction into this world.
I was, to a point. I saw Paris is Burning when I was in high school. I still have it on VHS, which I love. Yes. I learned a lot from our incredible team of consultants on the show, and a lot from our writers, and learning much more in depth about the culture.
Now, is it true that you drove cross country, hitting
Yes.
up vintage stores along the way to find costumes for this season?
This year, I drove from New York to Georgia and back.
You have to take me with you on your next trip. Welcome back to the Emmys edition of Couchsurfing. We're talking to the nominees for Outstanding Period Costume. And up next, Bina Daigeler and I traveled back to the 70s to discuss the costumes in Mrs. America. Here's what she had to say. You know, so much of accurately depicting an era involves getting the way people dressed at that time right. If that's off, the entirety of a project can be written off. What challenges did you run into making sure that you got this exactly right?
So I think I was very lucky because as in the 70s already, there was a lot of research and videos and photos. And Miss America, is about famous people in the movement of the equal rights. I actually had a lot of research material.
You know, clothes weren't at the forefront of these women's minds. They were fighting for change, they were fighting for equal rights, and yet their style became so iconic. Was that also something that you found intriguing, just the idea of being able to parachute into this world and play?
Well, I actually think that all the women, it doesn't matter if the conservatives like Phyllis Schlafly or Gloria Steinem, or Betty Friedan, everybody somehow used the way how they dressed as a statement. With Shirley, with her strong geographic prints that she was wearing and all her powerful jewelry and accessory, she wanted to stand out. And she did in a very, very powerful way.
What women choose to wear and what they choose not to wear is in many ways a form of protest. Were conversations about this idea had before filming?
Oh, yes. Yeah. We had actually, mainly we talked politics in the fittings. And we talked about the emancipation. We talked about the women's rights. We talked about the current situation. We talked about our lives. Mm-hmm. In the meantime, we put some clothes on and we said, oh, okay, we make the pants a little bit tighter and I think we need an orange blouse and let's try this hat. But always we talked politics.
Another Ryan Murphy project makes an appearance in this category with the Netflix hit Hollywood. Costume designers Sarah Evelyn and Lou Eyrich chatted with me about recreating the golden age of Hollywood. Sarah, I heard that there was a last-minute palette change and kind of sent you into a tailspin, but you recovered very quickly. It was a little daunting at first, but you quickly recovered, nailed it, and you've been nominated for an Emmy. So there is no story without a bit of drama thrown in for good measure.
Yes. I mean, I do think that's true, actually. It is sometimes the drama that helps make the best product.
That's right.
You double down. But yeah, there was, I would say there was an inspiration or a rethink once we really got into doing the fittings. And yeah, the palette changed. And that it really did mean that we had to double down on our concept.
The year also changed.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
It went from
right.
49 to 48, which is a huge difference.
Yes, I blocked that out. It started with, it was a golden age of Hollywood. So we started with warm golds, caramels, browns, and moved into more of a harvest tone palette. So maybe pastels and then richer jewel tones. And so it changed from that to more of a dreamy, just purely pastel and cream palette. And I feel like it worked really well. So
it did.
I was deeply happy for kind of the double down on the thinking and the commitment to wait, what are we doing and how do we make it best we can, which, I would say is a Ryan Murphy specialty.
Well, Ryan is usually quite precise every time we start a show, and with Sarah and I, he mentions specific photographers, specific movies, and then specific clips and scenes within that movie. He talks about the cinematographer's tone and the production designer's visions. We look at everybody's boards, hair and makeup. We look at the wigs that Ryan wants for specific actors. And sometimes Ryan will just be like, call me to we were on the set of The Prom, and Ryan called me over to the monitor and said, I think I want to do this whole pastel frothy feeling for the Academy Awards, and I've learned not to question it because he's always right. It's always spot on. I don't know how he does it.
Well, that's it for our show, but tune into the Emmys September 20th on ABC to see who takes home the gold. Good luck, nominees, and see you next time on Couchsurfing. Bye.